Hey guys, this is Tyler here. I'm here in Estonia, and I want to discuss why I think Australian guys should really consider their long-term future in Australia. I've been following what's been happening in Australia, and it is scary, honestly. I think it's just a sign of the times to come. Keep in mind for you Aussies or any guy here that's watching, or any lady who's watching, I wouldn't look at these measures that are happening with this COVID as this being the reason that countries are shutting down on a whole, or are shut down for entering and leaving. I think that it's easy for governments to use situations to help justify measures or agendas, way that they want to spend money, things that government wants to accomplish in the society, perhaps certain industries, corporations. We see this with big pharma, outcomes that they desire or profit. And I think this is a better way to look at it. Essentially, any stimuli could be used to produce a certain outcome or a designed outcome here. Whether or not it's legitimate is a different story. But one thing is for certain is that apart from what's happening in Australia could very well continue implementing other measures in the future. They could create other types of supposed issues that are happening and use this as a way to essentially lock people down. They bar people from leaving the country, bar people from engaging in day-to-day activities, whatever it is, they can use this to justify. For this reason, I don't think Australia, honestly, is ever going to go back to what it was, at least to that degree. I think governments worldwide have been desiring certain outcomes now, and Australia, unfortunately, is one of the harshest examples here. What Australian guys, though, probably should be doing is figuring out how they can leave the country, especially for guys who want to leave. Now, some of you Aussies may like the country. I think if I were in that position, I would probably be looking at, like, how could I live in the countryside, live in a more rural area, and essentially like we sometimes do in the US, live off the land. Something like that is probably what I would try to do if I wanted to remain in Australia as an Aussie. Based on what I've read, though, in many of the provinces, essentially been barring people from leaving their homes, from engaging with other people in public, from doing many different activities. It's just insane, honestly. We don't know. I mean, this type of scenario could be re-implemented in the future. They could use a different excuse to put these kind of measures. They could keep these measures in place permanently. And it's really scary, honestly. I mean, if a country is shutting down its borders, this is a huge warning flag. This is a red flag here. And if you're a guy that does not want to be here long term, I think now is when you should be looking at what are options, what countries can you go to and live and conduct the life that you want to have. Southeast Asia, of course, can work. I don't know if Southeast Asia, though, is independent enough. That's the biggest problem, I think, for guys that are interested in that region. I don't think they're as independent-minded country-wise like you'd see in Russia and China, and of course in parts of Europe. You guys, some of you guys may have to make a big move over to Europe. I know it's a far distance. It's far from me, being from North America, but this may be your best option now. If there is a window of time where the country's reopened up, you should probably leave in the future, maybe next spring, next summer, because eventually it could be permanent where they won't reopen the country. You may not be able to leave the borders, and it will be a really bad situation. Taxes, real estate, dating life, consumer goods are becoming extremely difficult and expensive for average Australians, and especially for guys who have to obtain this stuff on their own. They don't have anyone helping them. And there really are better places you can live. This is not the golden age of Australia like it used to be. And that's why you also have to look at how Australia is positioned as an Anglo-based country and how that affects their government and decisions that are put in place. I've met many good men from Australia. Some of the best guys I've met were from Australia. Some really funny guys that very interesting people all over the world. And almost every country I've lived, I met a guy from Australia. And so it's obviously very common and popular for Aussies to go to other places, whether it's to travel or to relocate. And also note that you guys still have first world passports in the eyes of most countries. You can very easily go to other countries and live and conduct business, and it's very legitimate if you want to go somewhere else, which this is a big plus for people that still have these first world passports and that still look legitimate from perspective of other countries, because once that's not there, it becomes a lot more challenging. Then it's similar to people from places like Iran or from Nigeria or from countries that just aren't seen in the same light like first world countries. At this point, it becomes very challenging. I think economics also are going to become a big issue, because if this country is constantly in lockdown, how's either small businesses or businesses that rely on foot traffic, that rely on face-to-face contact, how are these businesses going to succeed? It's absolutely mind-boggling. There's no way it can succeed, and this would just lead to imminent collapse. But you guys can control what you do, and you can absolutely leave and go somewhere else and find a better life. Understand that you MGTOW guys in Australia most likely are not the guys that are electing most of the officials in your country. If the officials you desired were elected, I'm sure a lot of these problems wouldn't be in place now. And that's something to notice, that, as I've stated in previous videos, as a common guy, you don't control the politics or political outcomes. And you have to understand that. Focus on areas that you do control. Relocation, maybe learning another language. You obviously speak a very global language. English is a very helpful language no matter where you go. These are all things that are going for you. I also am aware that many Australians have parents or they have grandparents that are from other countries. It's like US, it's a very big melting pot. So look at those other countries and see what their policies are on obtaining a passport through descent, because you may actually be able to get one very easily that way. There's different scenarios here, and you kind of have to very much personalize and see what works best for you. I think the biggest key here, though, is don't look at the country now. Look at what it will look like once all the effects happen in 10 years or 20 years, and envision what the country will at that point seem like. And for guys who do want to have a family or want to be married here, think of what it's going to be like if you have kids living in a place like Australia. I myself, I don't currently know what I'm going to do in that respective area of my life, but I can say this, is that if I were to get married and have kids, I certainly wouldn't want to be raising them in the US at this point in time. I can't imagine what it would be like, say, 20 years down the road. I think that's why it's always best to put it in that light. This is a really challenging moment for Australia this time, and I hope, honestly, it improves, but also remember that it's often better just to vote with your feet and go to somewhere you're treated best. So give me your feedback below, and thank you.